Yes, that's a clickbait thumbnail. 3 trophies. Did I actually win one? I'm going to show you every decision I made in building my AeroPress competition recipe this year. Last year at the competition, I had a recipe that worked. But if someone at the competition asked me, why are you actually using 93-degree water? I couldn't really give a real answer. I just knew it tasted good. So this year I really wanted to understand every single decision of the recipe, and not just what, but why. And what I found surprised me. The first thing I changed wasn't the recipe, it was actually how I looked at my grinder. Every time you're grinding coffee, you don't just get one particle size. You are getting a full spectrum of different particle sizes. For my simplification for this competition, I tried to look at the fines and the coarse grounds, because there's a huge difference in how they extract. The coarse grounds take quite some time to extract. You will see this in a V60. When you grind very coarsely, it takes time to extract, a few minutes. But when you're extracting fines, like in an espresso fine grind setting, then the extraction just takes like 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So there's a huge difference. Most people just brew them together, and this is quite fine. But for the competition, I wanted to look into this, and if I can make a more balanced cup, if I split those two groups and add the fines later to the brew. Separating those two groups was the easy part, but what to do with the fines and when? So I started sifting, and from my total dose of 20 grams of coffee, 2.5 grams were actually fines with this sifting tool. It's just actually a kitchen tool and not a professional coffee sifting tool. But this worked perfectly fine. And then I added my coffee grounds only after my second pour. So the coffee grounds were in contact with water for around 30 seconds or something like that. And the result in the final cup was instantly more sweetness, more body, and a nice texture to the cup, but without the bitterness that you usually get from the over extraction from those fines. I was actually testing adding the fines before and after the second pour, and the difference was really huge, because when adding the fines before the second pour, they're experiencing way more agitation through the pouring. And this means they're extracting way faster and longer, and therefore I was leaning to bitterness and over extraction quite easily when adding them before the second pour. Adding them after the second pour was a different game. I was controlling the agitation truly only with this spoon, and therefore I had a lot of control over how much agitation I'm giving those fines for extraction. The timing of adding the fines actually matters more than you think. Do you actually have experience with sifting in competition recipes and preparing for a competition? If you do so, please put your experience down in the comments below. I would love to hear about your learnings and how you are doing it. And then the next experiment came to my mind that I needed to try the salami shot experiment, where you put every part of the extraction in a different cup. So I started pressing the AeroPress and put the first 30 grams of the press into one cup. Then the next 30 grams of liquid I gave in the next cup, and in a third cup I gave the last 30 grams of the extraction. And what I found in this experiment was also very interesting. I found that the last cup with the last liquid I was pressing out of the AeroPress was slightly bitter, slightly harsh and drying on the finish. Not extreme, but still, for me, this was a very important decision for my recipe. I started with a new rule for pressing. I stopped my press slightly below the number 1 of the AeroPress, so I can prevent the last part of the extraction that is quite bitter to get into my final cup. So now I actually found a very interesting recipe that works for me very consistently, and it will produce a very different cup from the other competitors who are probably not considering these steps. I tried all of this with some other coffee. It was a Costa Rica natural, but it was not the competition coffee, so I needed to test this recipe now with the competition coffees. And that actually changes everything. Hey, that's me from the past. The competition is in 5 days. This is the first time where I'm brewing the competition coffees with my recipe that I built on the Costa Rica natural, and to see if it holds. One big advantage is that the competition coffees are a little bit higher in quality and with less defects and problems and off taste than the Costa Rica coffee I built this recipe with. So I'm hoping for a really good result, but if the recipe really holds, we are gonna find out right now. Both of the coffees hit an 8 out of 10 straight on the first try without any adjustments of my recipe. That tells me the recipe is solid. But here's what I'm thinking. When I'm sorting beans for the competition, I will add roughly 1 point on stage instantly because I'm sorting for sweeter beans without any defects. So I should be on stage at a 9 out of 10 anyways with this recipe. But how can I make a 10 out of 10 brew on this stage on that one day? I believe that I can still make these minor adjustments, and this is something for the next testing. 3 variables are still open to decide for my recipes: the temperature, the grind size, and the water recipe. As I only have 7 brews left in my bag for the Guatemala coffee and only 9 brews left for the coffee from Colombia, the Lavenda Haze, I will have to wait until my final equipment arrives. I am expecting Sibarist equipment for the AeroPress competition on Thursday, so I will be testing these 3 variables with different settings for these coffees on Thursday. I will be testing 90 degrees brewing temperature against 98 degrees. I will be testing a grind size of 2.3 against 2.9. I know these are huge jumps, but I want to taste the difference and where is the balance for these variables. And I will test the water recipe bright and juicy against simple and sweet. And after that, I hope I will brew a 10 out of 10 brew at the competition. Let's see. So after this finally arrived, I was able to do my final testings with the competition coffee, but due to some time issues, I really had to do it last minute. On Saturday, 1 day before the competition, I started testing with this equipment. High risk, but also high reward. This Sibarist pack has 1 booster plate that fits in the bottom of the AeroPress, and it also includes 3 different paper filters: a fast flow paper, a normal flow paper, the B3, and the HC. It's a very thick paper for very high filtration, but you have to use a lot of pressure on the AeroPress, so you should use a metal pitcher for this one. As the 2 coffees are completely different, I also chose 2 completely different approaches with my recipe. For the Guatemala, I chose the fast paper, and for the Lavenda Haze from Colombia, I chose the HC paper, because I wanted more filtration and a cleaner cup. If you're interested in the Sibarist AeroPress equipment and you want to know if it really makes a difference, please watch my next video that's coming up next video on Monday, because I will do a full breakdown what I learned about these papers. So now there's only 1 variable left, and that is water for the coffee. And after that, I'm gonna break down the full recipe for you. Water was the last variable, and honestly, it was the most surprising one. Sodium and potassium, these 2 minerals, are relevant for the acidity buffer in water, and they're influencing the acidity perception a lot. And for these coffees, I really had to reduce them nearly to 0 because they were not very beneficial for this coffee. The coffee was getting very flat and dull when I increased the amount of sodium and potassium. So I kept it quite low. But the magnesium and calcium were quite important for these coffees. And I was pushing the magnesium part so high until I get harshness, dryness, and some unwanted flavors. For the Guatemala coffee, this was at 120 ppm. First, I thought I can push it to 150 parts per million, but then I had to reduce it. And for the Lavenda Haze, I was going for 105. As these 2 coffees are completely different, they also needed these 2 different waters. If you want me to make a full breakdown of water recipes and how I decide how I'm designing a water recipe for a coffee, please let it down in the comments below. But now, it's time for the full competition recipe. In case you want the full recipes in writing with all the timestamps and what exactly to do at what stage of the recipe, you can find that in the free PDF guide I put down in the description below. You can just download it for free. The only difference between the 2 coffees on stage is actually the filter paper I'm using. That's the fast paper filter for the Guatemala coffee, which leads to a very fast and clean extraction, acidity forward. And then, on the other hand, I'm using the HC disc filter from Sibarist for the Lavenda Haze coffee. Because I want a cleaner cup, I'm using more pressure and it will take longer to extract. But there is some nuance there because I'm also changing temperature. The temperature is the second part I'm changing. I'm using 93 degrees for the Guatemala natural, but I'm only using 85 degrees for the Lavenda Haze. Because it's a co-ferment, it has very strong flavors I don't want in the coffee. So I'm going for the HC disc, so the extraction, the pressing will take way longer. My finish time is later, but I'm going down with the temperature, which slows down the extraction and gives the coffee more time to get the real flavors out there, but reduce the lavender taste in the final cup. You'll find all the detailed differences between the two recipes in the PDF guide, which is linked in the description down below. Did I win the AeroPress competition? No, I did not, but I placed in the top 9. In the first round, I had 3 opponents, and one of them is a former AeroPress champion in Austria, and I knocked him out. But in the next round, I faced Junior Vargas. He's the current barista champion in Austria, and he knocked me out for good. The 3 person who got the trophies are on first place Daniel, second place Anna, and third place Junior. But here's what I can say. I really had a lot of fun there, and my recipe was really good. I can tell you the sifting on stage worked. In the 5 minutes competition time, I was able to prepare my whole recipe without failure. And I truly believe that I brewed a good cup of coffee there. But I would have loved to go to the finals just to see if my recipe holds up with the Lavender Haze. It's a very weird coffee, and I would have loved to see if my recipe was different to Junior's, to Anna's, and to Daniel's, and if there would have been a chance to win this championship if Junior would not have knocked me out in the semifinals. Anyway, this year I really learned a lot. This year I really understood my recipe and I didn't just brew a coffee. And this is what I want to show you here. This AeroPress recipe still doesn't have a name yet. It's a 2-pour structure. I'm sifting my fines. I'm using an early press stop on my AeroPress. So whatever comes to your mind, put it in the comments below. And whatever comment has the most upvotes after 1 month is the name of the recipe, and I'm changing the video title afterwards, after 1 month, to the comment with the most thumbs up. So put it down in the comments below. Weird names are allowed, and well, looking forward to see you guys in the next video. Bye.